Hello, this is Jeremy Wade speaking, and this is a lesson that I did a couple weeks back, and this is my thoughts on a couple things I saw whilst reviewing this lesson. So my thoughts on what I did well, what I could have improved on, and I hope you enjoy and get some good feedback on my thinking throughout this process. So here we go. Okay, so how do you get students involved and engaged into science? Well, I've learned really early on that if you involve food in anything, they're going to get excited about it. They're going to be talking about it. So in this engage step, what I want to do is talk about going shopping with their mom and getting them thinking about nomenclature in that way. And I really enjoyed it. I think the students did, so I'm going to play the clip for you and you can see how that worked.
So one thing that I want to get you guys thinking about naming compounds again. Another example that I thought of the other day is, say, your mom or your dad, they're going to the store, and you're like, I need you to pick up Pop-Tarts, or I need you to pick up, I don't know, Juicy Juice, because Juicy Juice is awesome, right? Yes. Like, whatever it may be. I don't know if your parents are like mine, but whenever I tell my mom back in the day to get me Pop-Tarts or whatever, she could never get it. I would tell her what it was. I thought I was talking English. She would come back. I would say, I need the cherry flavored Pop-Tart. I see strawberry when I get home. Never understood why. So, what do you guys do? Does anyone have parents like that? That you can tell them everything, you can describe it in plain English, and they're just never going to get it. So, like, what kind of tricks do you do in order to describe this object to them, in order to make sure that you get what you need? Call them while they're at the grocery store. I've done that. Go with them. That always helps. But what if you can't go with them? Write it down. And what are you writing down when you're giving out what you need? What are you writing down? Are you just writing down like a name? Exact brand.
Cherry and big
Color. Cherry and big letters.
Cereal number.
If she can remember the serial number, or your dad can remember the serial number, he is a champion or she is a champion. I can't do that. But, so basically you're describing what it is with a language that he or she will be familiar with, so that when they actually get to the store, hopefully they're not picking up Cinnamon Toast Crunch when you said you wanted cherry Pop-Tarts, right? So, again, that's what we're doing here when we're learning this nomenclature stuff. We're trying to come up with a common theme and how we're going to understand all this naming.
So for my favorite teaching moment, I got to talk about covalents and prefixes, and I already understand that most of these students know prefixes like mono and di and tri, but the ones that they need to know are tetra, nona, hepta, those kinds of things. So what I wanted to do is relate this kind of thing to a video game that a lot of people know, Tetris. And when I was doing the example, I actually had another student give out another example that helped me, in fact, remember nana. And so you're going to hear that here in a couple seconds. And so I think it's a great moment because I got to have student involvement within the lesson, which is really key. So now I'm just going to play that clip for you and see how it is.
Is everyone familiar, before I use the example, is everyone familiar with the game Tetris? Everyone knows that theme song, knows it by heart? If you think about all the pieces of a Tetris game, you had the vertical column, you had the square, you had that little squiggly, you had the other little squiggly going the other way, you had the L block. If you think about how many blocks those are, you'll notice all of them are 4 blocks. And notice the name of Tetris is just like Tetra, except it's Tetris, to make it a little bit fancy so people think it sounds cool, because you don't want to just call it Tetra. Because who wants to buy a game that's just called 4, right? No one wants to buy that. So, again, if you're unfamiliar with these, and like some of the, like nana, that one always gets me. That's the one that I always forget. So, if you have, basically what I'm saying is, you're probably not going to struggle with all of these, probably. The thing that you want to do though is, when you're going home and you're practicing these, look at the ones that you specifically know that you forget at times. Like for me, it's nana, always. Sometimes hepta, depending on what day it is, right? So those are the ones you should work on. Yes?
Well, you can just think of your nana as being 90 years old.
That's what I'm trying to say. Did everyone get that example?
Seriously?
You can think of your Nana as 90 years old. You can think of your grandma as 90 years old. If that helps you remember it, then I would definitely use that because that helps me. So,
All right, let's get this just out of the way. My least effective teaching moment. Now, up here, you're going to see me just completely blank out. I was trying to give an example for these students to write it up on the board, give some guided practice so they could see that example, and my mind just blanked. I could not think of the example, and so I used a stupid method in that I just said, you know what, we'll come back to it, and I never came back to it. It was one of my least effective moments. It was just not a good moment that day. If I could go back, I would definitely have an example for them, but here it is in all its unglory, I guess you could say.
have an O, let's say you had something like, what's a good O acid? It's going to have hydrogen. Hypochlor, what is it? Those are fancy ones. We'll come back to that one here in a second. So,
Okay, now we get to talk about my most effective teaching moment. So the whole goal of this unit, this lesson, was to get students to understand that there is a universal language to chemistry by which all chemists are able to communicate their findings amongst all peoples. And that's what I wanted to key in on for this portion. And I want to have students understand why it's important that they learn this material, that it's going to be used the rest of the year, that they need to understand its universal applications in case they go into the field of chemistry later or any other science for that matter. So I think it's my best method here. It's most effective because students need to know why it's important that they're learning this material so that they understand they need to learn it. So here it is.
I just want to briefly mention, it might not be the most fun thing. Of course, we're not lighting things on fire, which is one of my favorite things to do in chemistry, but it's one of the most important things that you do in chemistry because it's helping you understand what you have in front of you. When you're able to name something, it has a value now. If you have an object and it doesn't have a name, it doesn't really have a value to it, right? When you see something and you just don't know what it is, it doesn't have that value. But as soon as you place a name to it, you understand what it is to some extent, and it has that value that you like. And so that's why I think it's important to do these names because, you're going to be using them all throughout the year, and it's important because it just helps you understand what you're seeing, right? So what I want to do now is just do some practice with this.
All right, so classroom management, that's a big, huge thing that you got to be good at when you're teaching. And one thing that I struggle with a little bit, and I really tried to work on it for this lesson, was time management and making sure that I allow enough time for students to do activities and do whatever they need to do, but also make sure that everything's flowing and everything's moving. And it's a simple strategy, yes, I know, but it's one of my favorites. I even mentioned it in the clip. I love thumbs up to let me know that students are ready to go. So here I use it to make sure that students are ready and prepared to continue with the lesson. And even though it's simple, I think it's effective. So I'm going to play this clip real quick for you right here.
Guys, I'm a huge fan of thumbs up, so if you've got the coloring, just go ahead and give me the thumbs up. Lets me know that we're good to go. Got some thumbs up. Still got some people shade, which is fine.
Alright, I also want to throw in this clip because I think it also shows some time management and how, I want my classroom to be. In this moment, I realize that we're about to go into something that's a little bit heavy and dense for some students, and I recognize that. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to mention to students, if I'm going too fast, let me know. I wanted this to be at their own pace, and if any student was, getting left behind, I wanted them to make sure that they felt comfortable letting me know and that it was all right. We would take the time to make sure that we get them, and I think it's really good and effective as a teacher. So I'm going to play that clip for you. Just wanted to add that right here. It's a little bonus clip. Here it is.
I want to make sure that this is, if I'm going too fast at any point during this, guys, go ahead, raise up a hand, let me know. If something's confusing to you guys, if I said something that just doesn't make sense, go ahead, throw up the hand, and also if you have questions, obviously, go ahead, raise your hand. It's no problem.
So when going over this video, I was watching myself and I was noticing as I was talking, I was doing one of two things that can be seen as an annoying habit for some students. One was what looked like some pacing. I know what I was trying to do was trying to make sure that I was moving around the class effectively and using the entire space available, but the way that I go about it, my posture is just not good. A lot of times I'm looking at the ground and talking towards the ground, and I'm not looking and engaging with my students, and I did it a lot more times than I thought I was. So here's a couple moments where that's going to show up, and I know that I need to be direct with my students, getting that eye contact so they know that I'm involved with them and they are getting everything from me.
Us and ate with Nick. This is where the naming gets a little bit weird. So we have the rules for covalent. Again, see, covalent bonding happens when you're sharing those electrons between those atoms. So.
Alright, so yeah, you could see a couple times I'm looking at the ground and not talking to my students, and it's a bad habit to get into. I need to make sure that I'm focusing in on my students because those are the people that I'm talking to. Overall, though, I thought that the lesson was okay. There wasn't a lot of activities or labs that I could do with this particular unit. Just nomenclature in and of itself is something hard to do. So that's something that I wish that I could have improved on because I wanted those students to be a little bit more active in their learning. But overall, I think that they got the material that they needed, and I think that I had a lot of opportunities for them to get it in different manners. So I think overall that was good, but I do understand that there is definitely room for improvement. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and if you have any feedback, you can email me at jg@dukes@jmu.edu, and I thank you for your time, and I hope you have a pleasant day.